The Cradlewood Valley breathed with a quiet, ancient magic. It was a place where the air itself hummed with forgotten songs, where the sun-dappled glades tasted of wild honey and dew, and where the very trees spoke in a language softer than a sigh. For generations uncounted, the people of Ethelgard had lived nestled within its embrace, their lives entwined with the valley's rhythms, their hearts attuned to its gentle pulse. Elara knew these rhythms better than most. From the moment she could walk, she had felt the subtle currents of the valley's magic, a sensation like cool water flowing through her veins. But it was the whispers that truly set her apart. While others heard only the rustle of leaves or the murmur of the wind, Elara heard words. Not spoken words, not the sharp, distinct sounds of human speech, but a symphony of impressions, emotions, and ancient memories woven into the very fabric of the forest. They were the valley's stories, its dreams, its warnings, carried on the breeze and through the roots beneath her feet. Today, the whispers were a restless hum, a low thrumming beneath the usual comforting chorus. Elara, her basket woven from supple willow branches slung over her arm, moved with practiced grace through the sun-kissed glade. Her fingers, nimble and quick, gathered lumina lilies, their petals glowing with a soft internal light that would chase away the night's shadows in the hearths of Ethelgard. Her companion, a tiny creature she called Lyra, flitted around her head. Lyra was a glimmerwing, no bigger than Elara's thumb, with wings of iridescent moss and eyes like polished obsidian. She shimmered with a faint, silvery light, leaving a trail of sparkling dust wherever she danced. "They're troubled today, aren't they, Lyra?" Elara murmured, not expecting a verbal reply, but understanding the soft, inquisitive trills the glimmerwing offered in response. Lyra darted to a particularly vibrant lumina lily, hovering over it as if listening intently. The whispers, usually a tapestry of gentle affirmations and the slow, deep wisdom of the earth, were now fragmented. Elara caught snatches of unease, fading, loss, cold. A prickle of apprehension traced its way up her spine. This wasn't the usual melancholic undertone of ancient things, but something newer, sharper, like a discordant note in a familiar melody. She straightened, pushing a stray strand of her chestnut hair from her eyes. Around her, the Cradlewood Valley was a riot of life and magic. Whisper willows wept shimmering dewdrops from their elongated branches, each drop sparkling with captured starlight. Moon petal blooms unfurled in shaded alcoves, their ethereal glow a beacon for nocturnal pollinators. Even the air itself seemed to shimmer, carrying the faint, sweet scent of pollen and damp earth. Every stone, every stream, every creature seemed imbued with a quiet sentience, a consciousness that Elara felt she could almost touch. Ethelgard itself was a marvel. Its homes, built into the living trunks of colossal ancient trees, or crafted from smooth riverstones and interwoven branches, seemed to grow organically from the valley floor. Pathways of glowing moss snaked between dwellings, illuminating the village after dusk. The heart of the village was the great hearth, a perpetual fire tended by generations of hearthkeepers, its smoke carrying prayers and stories up to the sky. But even amidst this familiar beauty, the growing disquiet in the whispers was undeniable. Elara had tried to mention it to her neighbors, to the village elders, even to her own mother. "The forest feels restless," she'd said. "The whispers are changing." They would smile, pat her hand gently, and tell her it was just her sensitivity, or the shifting of the seasons. "The whispering woods have their moods, child," they'd say. "Always have." But Elara knew this was different. The whispers were urgent now, a low, persistent cry. Lyra, sensing her unease, settled on Elara's shoulder, her tiny body vibrating with a comforting warmth. Her basket full, Elara decided to take the long way home, drawn deeper into the woods, towards the oldest, most sacred part, the Heartwood Grove. It was a place of deep reverence, where the very first trees of the valley were said to have taken root, and where the whispers were strongest, clearest, and held the most profound wisdom. She felt an inexplicable pull, a magnetic force guiding her steps. As she walked, the trees grew taller, their branches intertwining overhead to form a natural cathedral. The light grew dimmer, softer, filtered through countless layers of leaves. The air grew cooler, richer with the scent of damp earth and ancient bark. Here, the whispers were a roaring chorus in Elara's mind, a symphony of voices that threatened to overwhelm her. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over her, separating the strands of emotion and meaning. Deeper, The silence. Spreading. Help us. Silence? In the Heartwood Grove? That was impossible. The grove was the source, the very pulse of the valley's root mind. She pushed through a curtain of shimmering vines, their leaves like polished emeralds. The ground beneath her feet was softer here, carpeted with centuries of fallen leaves and a strange, deep violet moss that seemed to absorb all sound. And then, she saw it. A clearing. Not a large one, perhaps 20 paces across, ringed by trees so ancient their trunks were wider than Alara's small home. But within the clearing, there was a profound, suffocating stillness. The violet moss, usually vibrant, was faded, almost gray, and brittle to the touch. The air felt heavy, dead. And the whispers, they were gone. Not just quiet, not just faint. Gone. How? Utterly. Alara felt a sudden chill, deeper than any winter breeze. It was like a hole torn in the very fabric of the valley's song. Lyra, usually so bright, clung to Alara's tunic, her own light dimmed, her tiny body trembling. In the center of the clearing stood a single enormous tree, its bark gnarled and silvered with age. This was the Heartwood tree, the oldest of the old, the one said to be directly connected to the valley's core. Its leaves, usually a deep vital green, were tinged with a sickly yellow, and some had already fallen, brittle and brown, onto the silent moss. What was even more alarming was what Alara saw at the base of the Heartwood tree. A creeping shadow, not of natural gloom, but a strange, dark vine, unlike anything she had ever seen in the valley. It was black as pitch, with an oily sheen, and instead of leaves it bore small, sharp thorns that seemed to drink the light around them. It coiled around the ancient roots, slowly, relentlessly, like a serpent strangling its prey. Wherever the vine touched the tree, the bark was discolored, a dark, bruised purple, and the vital sap that usually ran freely seemed to have dried to a crust. Alara knelt, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She reached out a hesitant hand, then pulled it back. The air around the vine felt cold, dead, a stark contrast to the warmth and life that usually permeated the Heartwood Grove. She felt a profound sense of wrongness, a violation of the valley's sacred balance. This was no seasonal change. This was a sickness, a blight, and it was spreading from the very heart of the Whispering Woods. She stayed there for a long time, watching the slow, inexorable creep of the dark vine, feeling the chilling silence that emanated from the Heartwood tree. The whispers which had guided her here were now a distant, mournful echo, as if mourning the silence in the grove. Finally, with a heavy heart, Alara stood. She had to tell someone. Someone who would believe her. Someone who understood the true nature of the Whispering Woods, not just as a beautiful forest, but as the living, breathing soul of the Cradlewood Valley. There was only one person. Nana Willow lived in a small winding house at the edge of Athelgard, nestled against a particularly ancient whisper willow. Her home was a treasure trove of forgotten lore, dried herbs, and glittering crystals, smelling perpetually of sage and warm bread. Nana Willow's eyes, though clouded with age, held a sharp, knowing glint, and her hands, gnarled from years of working with the earth, were surprisingly gentle. She was the village's unofficial lore-keeper, healer, and dream-spinner, the one who remembered stories from before her own grandmother's time. Alara burst into Nana Willow's cozy kitchen, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Lyra, still clinging to her, let out a distressed series of chirps. Nana Willow, stirring a pot of fragrant elderberry tea over a low fire, didn't even look up. "Took you long enough, little sparrow," she said, her voice raspy but kind. "I felt the silence spread an hour ago." Alara stared, wide-eyed. "You felt it? The silence in the Heartwood Grove?" Nana Willow finally turned, her gaze piercing. "The root mind is not just the trees, child. It is the valley's consciousness. When a part of it aches, we all feel it, if we are open enough to listen." She gestured to a stool by the fire. "Sit. Tell me what you saw." Alara recounted everything. The changing whispers, the inexplicable pull to the Heartwood Grove, the devastating silence, and the creeping dark vine. She spoke with a passionate urgency, her voice trembling slightly. Nana Willow listened patiently, her eyes never leaving Alara's face. When Alara finished, the old woman sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of many years. I feared this day would come, Nana Willow said, her gaze drifting to the flickering flames of the hearth. The legends speak of a shadow, a creeping blight that seeks to silence the songs of the earth. It is called the Hush. The Hush? Elara repeated, the name sending a shiver down her spine. Aye. It feeds on silence, on the absence of magic. It thrives where the luminous weave, the life force of our valley, grows thin. The heartwood tree, being the oldest and most connected, would be its primary target. Nana Willow reached for a small, intricately carved wooden box, its surface polished smooth by countless touches. For generations, the Hush has been nothing more than a cautionary tale, a myth to frighten children. But the whispers have been growing fainter in other parts of the world, I've heard. And now it reaches our home. But why? Why now? Elara asked, her mind racing. And what does it want? It wants to silence everything, child. To drain the magic from the land, leaving it barren and cold. The whispers are the valley's memory, its wisdom, its very breath. To silence them is to kill the valley. Nana Willow's voice was grim. If the Hush takes root in the Heartwood Grove, the entire Cradlewood Valley will wither. The Lumina lilies will fade, the Whisper Willows will fall silent, and Athelgard will become a ghost. The thought was unbearable. Elara pictured her vibrant valley turning gray, the laughter of children replaced by an echoing emptiness. What can we do? Elara asked, her voice small but resolute. There must be something. Nana Willow opened the wooden box. Inside, nestled on a bed of dried moon-petal blooms, lay a single shimmering acorn. It wasn't like any acorn Elara had ever seen. It pulsed with a soft inner light, a faint golden glow that seemed to beat with a slow, steady heart. This is a seed of Lumina, Nana Willow explained, her voice hushed with reverence. It is said to hold the purest essence of the root mind, a spark of the original magic that birthed our valley. It was given to my ancestors by the first trees themselves, passed down with a single sacred instruction. To be planted only when the heartwood itself is threatened by the deepest silence. Elara looked at the acorn, mesmerized. It felt warm, vibrant, humming with a power that seemed to counteract the chilling memory of the Hush. But just planting it won't be enough, will it? Elara asked, a prickle of intuition guiding her. The Hush is strong. Nana Willow nodded slowly. You are right. The seed needs more than just earth and water. It needs to be awakened, to draw upon a power strong enough to push back the Hush. The legends speak of a place, a hidden spring deep within the mountains that guard our valley. A place where the luminous weave converges, a nexus of pure, raw magic. It is known as the Starstone Spring. Raw magic. It is known as the Starstone Spring. The Starstone Spring? Elara had heard the name in hushed tales, a place of myth, said to be so high in the treacherous peaks that no one from Athelgard had visited it in living memory. But it's so far, and the mountains are dangerous. Indeed, Nana Willow said, her gaze firm. It is a perilous journey. The path is lost to time, known only through cryptic riddles and ancient star charts, and the mountains are home to creatures that do not welcome trespassers. She looked at Elara, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and fierce hope. But you, Elara, you are attuned to the whispers. You hear the true song of the valley. You felt the silence before anyone else. You are the only one who can truly carry this burden, this hope. She carefully lifted the seed of Lumina from its resting place and placed it gently into Elara's outstretched hand. The warmth of it spread through Elara's palm, a comforting heat that chased away the cold dread she felt. You must take the seed to the Starstone Spring, Nana Willow continued. There, under the light of the moonsinger's bloom, a flower said to only bloom once every 100 years, you must immerse the seed in the spring's waters. It is then that the seed will awaken, its power amplified by the spring and the bloom. Only then will it be strong enough to heal the heartwood tree and banish the Hush. Elara clutched the seed tightly. The weight of it was immense, the future of the Cradlewood Valley resting in her small hands. She felt a surge of fear, but beneath it, a nascent spark of determination. This was her valley, her home. She couldn't let it fall silent. How will I find it? Elara asked, her voice steady now. The Starstone Spring, the moonsinger's bloom. How will I know the way? Nana Willow smiled, a faint, knowing curve of her lips. The whispers will guide you, Elara. They will sing the path to you if you listen with all your heart. And Lyra, she added, nodding towards the Glimmerwing, will be your eyes in the darkest places. As if understanding, Lyra chirped brightly, her light flaring with renewed vigor. Elara looked down at the seed of Lumina, then back at Nana Willow. The old woman's eyes held a deep conviction, a profound trust that settled in Elara's heart. Go, Elara, Nana Willow urged, her voice soft but firm. The heartwood tree cannot hold out much longer. The valley needs its voice back. It needs you to listen. Elara nodded, a solemn promise forming in her heart. She stood, the seed of Lumina warm in her hand, Lyra fluttering protectively around it. The whispers, which had been so fragmented and fearful, now seemed to coalesce around her, a chorus of encouragement, a soft, insistent call to adventure. The path ahead was unknown, shrouded in the mists of ancient tales and perilous mountains. But Elara felt a strange sense of purpose bloom within her. She was no longer just the girl who heard whispers, she was the one who must answer them. The valley was calling, and she would answer. Her journey had just begun. Elara spent the remainder of the fading day preparing. It wasn't much she had to gather, for her life was simple. A small satchel of dried berries, a water skin, a thick cloak against the mountain chill, and the small, smooth stone she'd carried since childhood, a silent comfort in her palm. The whispers hummed around her, a gentle, insistent current, guiding her hands, steadying her heart. They were no longer just sounds, they felt like threads of light, pulling her towards an unseen loom. As the first sliver of dawn painted the eastern sky in hues of soft rose and lavender, Elara stood at the edge of her quiet village. The huts were still, their inhabitants deep in slumber, unaware of the quiet farewell she offered to the only home she had ever known. A lone ancient oak, its branches gnarled like the hands of an old storyteller, stood sentinel at the village's worn path. As she passed it, a whisper, clearer than any she'd heard before, seemed to sigh from its leaves. Go with the current, little seeker, trust the unseen path. With a deep breath that filled her lungs with the crisp morning air, Elara stepped beyond the familiar boundaries. The path she chose wasn't the worn track leading to the neighboring villages, but a narrower, less traveled deer trail that snaked into the dense, ancient forest known as the Whispering Woods, the very edge of the wild lands that separated her valley from the distant, perilous mountains. The Whispering Woods lived up to its name. As soon as Elara stepped beneath its canopy, the air grew cooler, and the light dappled into shifting patterns of gold and green. Every rustle of leaves, every murmur of the wind through the boughs, seemed to carry a fragment of sound, a suggestion. At first, it was overwhelming. She paused, closing her eyes, letting the cacophony wash over her. Then, she focused. The fearful, fragmented whispers of the valley's people faded, replaced by a deeper, more resonant hum from the woods themselves. This new chorus was different, ancient, patient, and surprisingly reassuring. It spoke not of fear, but of direction. Left. No, not that way. Too much shadow. A slight curve to the right, where the moss grows thickest. She followed, her steps light, her senses attuned. The trees here were unlike any she'd seen near her village. Their bark was etched with patterns resembling forgotten runes, and some seemed to glow faintly from within, a soft, emerald luminescence pulsing beneath the surface. Strange, bell-shaped flowers hung from vines, chiming with every passing breeze, their sound a delicate counterpoint to the deep hum of the woods. Fungus, like tiny, glowing lanterns, lit patches of the forest floor, casting ethereal shadows. As she delved deeper, the whispers grew clearer, more focused, guiding her through a labyrinth of twisting roots and tangled undergrowth. She noticed a pattern emerging. The whispers led her not along the easiest path, but often towards places of unusual beauty or subtle magic. She found herself at the foot of a waterfall whose waters cascaded over stones that glittered with embedded crystals, or beside a pool where iridescent fish swam in silent, graceful circles. It was by such a pool, its surface reflecting the dappled sunlight like a shattered mirror, that Elara encountered her first true companion of the journey. She had been tracing the patterns on a particularly ancient tree, listening to the soft, rhythmic pulse of the whispers emanating from its trunk, when a flicker of movement caught her eye. It was a creature no bigger than her thumb, with delicate, translucent wings that shimmered with all the colors of a rainbow, catching and refracting the light. Its body was slender, almost ethereal, and its antennae quivered with an almost frantic energy. A glimmering. She had heard tales of them, tiny sprites of light that danced on the edges of the deepest forests, drawn to places of strong magic. They were notoriously shy. But this one, instead of flitting away, seemed drawn to her. It hovered, its wings beating so rapidly they were a blur, then settled gently on her outstretched finger. A wave of pure wonder, mixed with a curious sense of recognition, washed over Ilara. The whispers around her seemed to coalesce around the glimmerwing, a soft, welcoming chorus. The creature's tiny head tilted, and its antennae brushed lightly against her skin. A sensation, not a sound, bloomed in Ilara's mind, a feeling of vibrant curiosity, a shimmering eagerness, and a distinct impression of eye guidance. The glimmerwing, it seemed, was also seeking the valley, or perhaps it was seeking her. Its wings pulsed, not just with light, but with a subtle surge of energy that Ilara could almost feel in her bones. "Hello," she whispered, her voice barely audible amidst the forest symphony. The glimmerwing pulsed in response, then lifted into the air, spiraling gently ahead of her, its iridescent trail a beacon in the shifting light. It became her silent guide, a living compass of light. When the whispers grew vague, the glimmerwing would dart in a specific direction, its tiny form glowing brighter, and Ilara would feel the whispers firm up, pointing her true way. Together, they journeyed deeper into the whispering woods. The sun began its slow descent, painting the western sky in fiery oranges and purples. Ilara found a hollow beneath the roots of a giant ancient redwood-like tree, its trunk so wide she could have made a small home within its shelter. The glimmerwing, which she silently named Lumen, settled on a nearby glowing mushroom, its light adding to the soft ambience. As darkness truly fell, the woods transformed. Bioluminescent moss covered the ground like a starry carpet, and flowers opened to reveal petals that glowed with a soft inner light. The air filled with the gentle, rhythmic chirps of unseen creatures, and the whispers of the trees deepened into a profound, comforting lullaby. Ilara lay down, wrapped in her cloak, feeling an unprecedented connection to the earth beneath her, to the ancient life all around her. The whispers weren't just guiding her path, they were becoming a part of her, a living language she was slowly learning to speak, not with her voice, but with her very soul. She drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep, Lumen's gentle glow, a silent vigil. The next morning, refreshed and renewed, Ilara and Lumen continued their journey. The whispering woods gradually began to thin, the trees giving way to wider clearings and a terrain that sloped gently downwards. The air grew fresher, carrying a new scent. Damp earth, cool stone, and the unmistakable aroma of flowing water. The whispers, which had been a rich, earthy hum in the forest, now took on a lighter, more crystalline quality, like the chime of distant bells. They emerged from the last thicket of trees into a vast open meadow, bathed in the morning sun. And there, stretching across the valley floor, shimmering like a ribbon of pure light, was the River of Echoes. It was unlike any river Ilara had ever seen. Its waters weren't just clear. They seemed to ripple with a faint internal luminescence, catching the sunlight and scattering it into 1,000 dancing prisms. Mist, thin and ethereal, rose from its surface, swirling and coalescing into fleeting shapes that seemed to whisper and dissolve. The sound of the river was a constant melodic hum, a symphony of gentle lapping and soft gurgles that blended seamlessly with the whispers Ilara heard. As she approached the bank, Lumen darted ahead, circling above the water with an excited flutter of its wings. The whispers here were a complex tapestry of sound. She heard the gentle rush of the current, yes, but interwoven with it were fragments of other sounds. A child's forgotten giggle, the mournful cry of an ancient bird, a snatch of a song sung in a language she didn't know, the rhythmic beat of a long-vanished drum. These were the echoes, the imprints of moments and emotions carried on the river's currents from forgotten ages. Driven by an irresistible urge, Ilara knelt at the river's edge. The water, when she dipped her hand into it, was cool and vibrant, tingling with an unfamiliar energy. The whispers intensified, surging around her, and she felt as if the river itself was reaching out to her. Taking a deep breath, she cupped her hands and drank. The moment the water touched her lips, a jolt, like a gentle lightning strike, surged through her. It wasn't painful, but exhilarating. Her senses sharpened, the world around her blossoming into vibrant clarity. The colors of the meadow seemed richer, the scent of the wildflowers more potent. And the whispers. They were no longer just sounds in her mind but feelings, images, fleeting memories that washed over her with the river's current. She saw flashes, a figure, tall and cloaked, standing on a distant peak, gazing at a valley teeming with life. These were not her memories, but the rivers, the echoes of the valley's past, carried on its ancient flow. Lumen landed softly on her shoulder, its light pulsing in sync with her accelerated heartbeat. A feeling of reassurance flowed from the tiny creature, grounding her amidst the sensory deluge. The whispers, too, seemed to coalesce, urging her gently. Listen, understand, remember. Elara spent hours by the river of echoes, listening, absorbing. She learned to differentiate between the myriad echoes, the joyful, the sorrowful, the mundane, the magical. She began to understand that the valley was not merely a place, but a living entity, with a history as deep and complex as the river itself. She saw glimpses of ancient protectors, guardians who had once walked these lands, their purpose intertwined with the valley's magic. And she felt with a growing certainty that her own journey was a continuation of their legacy. Crossing the river proved to be a subtle test. The whispers guided her to a section where ancient moss-covered stones created a natural ford. The stones, however, were slick and uneven, and the current, though not treacherous, was strong. One misstep, and she could be swept into the deeper waters, where the echoes were more fragmented and disorienting. Lumen sipped ahead, its light illuminating the most stable stones, guiding her gaze. The whispers, too, were precise, directing her footfalls, warning of loose rocks, encouraging her with a soft, steady rhythm. Steady, balance, trust. Halfway across, a particularly strong eddy of echoes washed over her. It was a wave of overwhelming sadness, a vision of the valley shrouded in darkness, its magic dimmed. For a moment, Elara stumbled, her resolve wavering under the weight of such ancient sorrow. But then, a stronger current of whispers surged through her, not of the past, but of the present and future. Hold fast, the light remains. You are the bridge. She steadied herself, pushing through the wave of despair, her gaze fixed on Lumen's unwavering light. As she reached the far bank, dripping but triumphant, she felt a profound shift within her. Her connection to the whispers was no longer just auditory. It was visceral, empathic. She could feel their meaning, not just hear their sounds. A faint, internal warmth spread through her, and she noticed, to her surprise, a subtle, almost imperceptible glow emanating from her hands as she wrung the water from her cloak. The river's magic had left its mark, deepening her bond with the unseen forces of the valley. Beyond the river of echoes, the landscape began to change dramatically. The flat plains gave way to rolling hills, their slopes dotted with ancient, wind-sculpted trees. The air grew thinner, cooler, and the whispers, while still present, took on a more solemn, profound tone, like the deep chords of an unseen organ. In the distance, rising majestically against the horizon, were the perilous mountains, not jagged, foreboding peaks, but colossal, ancient sentinels, their summits often wreathed in clouds, their lower slopes cloaked in dark, coniferous forests. They looked less like a barrier and more like a gateway to something immense and ancient. As Elara ascended the gentle foothills, she noticed a pattern in the landscape. Scattered, weathered stones, some standing upright, others toppled, formed an invisible path. Following the whispers and Lumen's gentle guidance, she found herself walking towards a clearing where a magnificent circle of standing stones rose from the earth. These were the stone sentinels, mentioned in the oldest village tales as the guardians of the mountain pass, though no one had truly known their exact location or meaning. The sentinels were colossal, rough-hewn pillars of dark ancient stone, scarred by millennia of wind and rain, yet still exuding an aura of profound power. Moss and lichen, some of it glowing faintly with the same emerald light she'd seen in the whispering woods, clung to their surfaces, tracing intricate, forgotten patterns. The air within the circle hummed with an almost palpable energy, a deep vibration that resonated in Elara's chest. Dungnade find, Q Andel, Astonidin Pyre, Ignorintile. The Elara's chest. Lumen, perched on her shoulder, quivered with excitement, its light pulsing rapidly. The whispers here were a symphony unlike any she had heard before. They were not fragmented echoes or guiding directions, but a complex, resonant chorus of voices, ancient and deep, weaving together a narrative of ages past, of duties undertaken, of a sacred trust held. They spoke of watching, of guarding, of waiting, Daichi. As Elara approached the center of the circle, the whispers intensified, swirling around her, seeming to coalesce into a powerful, almost physical current. It felt like a test, a deep probing of her intent. She felt a slight resistance, an invisible barrier that hummed with ancient magic, preventing her from stepping fully into the heart of the circle. Who seeks passage? The whispers seemed to ask, not in words but in a profound feeling of inquiry. By what right do you disturb our vigil? Elara paused, her heart pounding. She looked at Lumen, who pulsed reassuringly. She closed her eyes, reaching deep within herself, remembering the feeling of the river's magic, the connection to the valley. She knew she couldn't simply push past this power. She had to answer. Opening her eyes, she extended her hands, palms up, towards the nearest sentinel. She focused not on words, but on intent. She projected her purpose, her pure desire to help the valley, to answer its call, to understand the source of the whispers. She felt the warmth from the river water still within her, a gentle hum of connection, and she let it flow outwards, a silent offering to the ancient stones. As her intent connected, the resistance softened. The whispers shifted from inquiry to a gentle curiosity, then to a profound sense of recognition. A warmth spread from her hands, through the stone, and into the very earth. The moss on the sentinels glowed brighter, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Then a cascade of images, swift and clear, flooded her mind. She saw the valley not as it was now, but as it had been. A vibrant heartland of magic, protected by beings of light and wisdom. She saw the sentinels themselves, not as inert stones, but as living guardians, placed there by those ancient protectors to ward off a growing darkness that threatened to consume the valley's light. She saw the whispers, not as random sounds, but as the valley's own voice, growing fainter over the ages as the protection weakened. Until now, a desperate, final call. And she saw herself, a small, determined figure standing on a precipice, holding a tiny, fragile spark of hope. The vision faded, leaving Elara breathless but filled with a profound understanding. The sentinels were not merely guardians of a path, they were keepers of a memory, a legacy, and now, they had recognized her as a part of it. With a final deep resonance, the invisible barrier dissolved. The whispers around her transformed into a chorus of encouragement, a powerful uplifting surge of energy. Go forth, little seeker. The way is open. The valley awaits its champion. Elara stepped through the circle of sentinels, feeling the ancient magic embrace her, not as a challenge but as a blessing. The air beyond the circle felt different, clearer, sharper, charged with a raw, untamed power. The foothills gave way to steep, winding paths that climbed higher and higher into the heart of the mountains. The perilous mountains now loomed before her in their full, majestic glory. Their peaks, dusted with eternal snow, scraped against a sky of brilliant, unfathomable blue. Dark chasms cut deep into their flanks, promising both danger and hidden wonders. Forests of ancient pines, their branches heavy with snow even in this season, clung stubbornly to the slopes. The whispers, now a clear, resonant call, emanated directly from the highest, most distant peaks, pulling her onward with an irresistible force. She looked back for a moment, seeing the gentle plains and the shimmering river stretching far behind her, a path of courage and discovery. She was no longer just Elara, the girl who heard whispers. She was Elara, the chosen, the seeker, the one who carried the valley's hope in her heart. Lumen, still on her shoulder, let out a tiny, joyful trill, its light blazing with renewed intensity. The journey ahead would be arduous, fraught with unknown challenges, but as Elara took her first resolute step onto the mountain path, she felt an unwavering sense of purpose bloom within her. The valley was calling, and she was answering, ready to face whatever lay hidden in the heart of the perilous peaks. Her true ascent had just begun. Her true ascent had just begun. The mountain path, initially a faint deer track through a sparse forest of ancient gnarled pines, immediately steepened. Their needles, long and dark, seemed to absorb the last vestiges of starlight, yet beneath them, patches of moss shimmered like forgotten emeralds, catching the soft glow Lumen cast. The air grew thinner with each upward step, carrying the crisp scent of pine sap and cold, damp stone. Beneath Elara's sturdy boots, the earth was a challenging mix of loose scree and stubborn roots, making each step a conscious effort. Lumen, perched on her shoulder, pulsed gently, its light a warm, steady beacon that danced ahead, illuminating the treacherous ground. Elara focused on her breathing, the rhythm of her heart mirroring the steady beat of purpose within her. She thought of the valley, nestled far below, a sleeping jewel under the fading moon, trusting her to find its remedy. The hope of her people was a tangible weight, not burdensome, but a warm ember in her chest, fueling her resolve against the rising chill. The first real challenge wasn't a beast or a trap, but the mountain itself. A peculiar wind, cold and whispering, began to sift through the ancient trees. It was the whisper wind, a phenomenon known only in the highest peaks. It wasn't just air, it carried fragmented thoughts, echoes of worries, doubts, and fears, her own nascent anxieties magnified, and those of countless souls who had traversed these paths long past. It tried to sow confusion, to make her question her path, to make her remember the comforts of home, the perceived impossibility of her quest. The wind tugged at her cloak, and its whispers coiled around her mind, trying to plant seeds of despair. "Turn back, Elara," it seemed to sigh. "The task is too great. You are but one girl. What hope can you carry against the mountain's might?" Lumen, sensing the encroaching shadows of doubt, flared, its light pushing back against the ethereal tendrils of the whisper wind. Elara remembered the elder's words, spoken with a serene wisdom that now felt profoundly relevant. The mountain tests not strength of limb, but strength of spirit. She closed her eyes for a moment, picturing the vibrant, laughing faces of her village, their shared stories, their unwavering belief in her. She felt the warmth of their collective hope, a shield against the cold whispers. Her own spirit, resolute and bright, shone like a beacon. The whisper wind faltered, its whispers dying to mere sighs, as her unwavering purpose proved stronger than its ephemeral doubts. She opened her eyes, her gaze clear and determined, and took another resolute step forward. After hours of relentless climbing, the ancient pines thinned, giving way to a more open, rocky terrain. Here, the very stones seemed to hum with a quiet, resonant energy, a low vibration that Elara felt in her bones. As the sun began to paint the distant eastern peaks with hues of rose and gold, transforming the jagged silhouettes into glowing ethereal giants, Elara stumbled upon a small, sheltered grove. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. Trees with bark like polished obsidian reached towards the sky, their slender branches intertwined overhead. Their leaves were not green, but a soft, shimmering silver, shedding tiny, luminous dust motes onto the mossy ground below. This was a luminous grove, spoken of only in the oldest tales of the valley, a place where the mountain's magic gathered to rest and replenish itself. From between the glowing leaves, tiny iridescent creatures emerged, no larger than Elara's thumb, with wings like spun moonlight. These were gleamwings, the mountain's natural light-bearers, cousins to Lumen, though wild and free. They fluttered around Elara and Lumen, their wings beating with a soft, musical hum, chirping a song of greeting. Their combined light created a mesmerizing kaleidoscope of shifting hues, dancing among the silver leaves. Lumen trilled excitedly, a pure, joyful sound, exchanging flashes of light with them, as if sharing secrets of the sky and the deep earth. Elara watched, a smile gracing her lips, feeling a profound connection to this magical place. Here, in this wild, beautiful sanctuary, she didn't feel alone. In the very center of the grove, a spring bubbled from the heart of a large, multifaceted crystal that pulsed with an inner, gentle light. The water wasn't clear, but luminous, swirling with soft internal lights, like liquid starlight. The elder had mentioned such springs, places of truth water, said to reveal glimpses of the mountain's deepest secrets to those with a pure heart. Carefully, Elara knelt beside the crystal, its facets cool and smooth beneath her fingertips. She cupped her hands, gathering a portion of the glowing liquid, and took a slow, deliberate sip. The water was cool and sweet, tingling on her tongue, and as it flowed down her throat, a peculiar warmth spread through her, settling deep in her chest. For a moment, her vision blurred, filled with fleeting flashes. A distant peak shrouded in swirling iridescent mist, a swirling vortex of energy deep within the mountain's core, and a faint, resonant hum that seemed to call to her, a melody of profound power. The truth water didn't give her clear answers, but it sharpened her senses, making the mountain's subtle energies more apparent, tuning her to its ancient song. Lumen, perched on her shoulder, nudged her cheek, then lowered its head to drink from her palm, its light growing even more vibrant, as if invigorated by the magical draught. Refreshed and subtly attuned, Ilara continued her climb. The terrain grew steadily more challenging, with sheer rock faces that demanded careful handholds and narrow ledges that clung precariously to the mountain's flank. She relied on her agility, her seasoned climbing skills, and the specialized tools she carried. As she ascended higher, the landscape transformed once more. She began to notice strange, unnatural formations, towering pillars of stone perfectly smooth and cylindrical, rising from the earth like ancient sentinels guarding a forgotten way. They bore no resemblance to natural erosion, their surfaces too precise, too deliberate. On the face of one particularly massive sentinel, a pillar that seemed to pierce the very clouds, Ilara spotted intricate carvings. These were not the common pictograms of her valley, nor the familiar symbols of her people's history, but angular, flowing runes, pulsating with a faint, steady light that seemed to emanate from within the stone itself. They were too high to reach, etched near the sentinel's apex, but Lumen, sensing her deep curiosity, zipped off her shoulder with a joyful trill. It circled the glowing runes, its own light intensifying as it drew near. As it passed over them, the runes flared brighter, and a soft melodic chime resonated through the thin mountain air, a harmonious sound that echoed the earlier hum of the truth water. Lumen returned, landing on her shoulder and nudging her ear, as if urging her to understand, to listen. Ilara remembered tales of the sky scribes, ancient beings who had carved knowledge into the mountain centuries ago, being said to have woven the very fabric of magic. These were their marks, their enduring messages. She tried to decipher them, recalling fragments of the old tongue her elder had painstakingly taught her. One symbol, repeated frequently, resembled a coiled serpent with a star at its head, a symbol of root magics and guidance. Another looked like a flickering flame within a circle, heartfire or source. The runes, though not fully translatable, seemed to point upwards, towards the highest, most jagged peaks, the very heart of the mountain. They were a map, a message, a challenge, a promise. She felt a surge of hope. She was on the right path. As dusk approached, a chilling mist began to roll in from the higher elevations, thick and opaque, obscuring the path ahead and swallowing the last light of day. Ilara sought shelter, her eyes scanning the rock face until she found a narrow, almost hidden opening, barely wide enough for her to squeeze through. It led into a series of caves. The air inside was heavy with the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic and ancient, a peculiar tang that prickled at the back of her throat. Lumen's light struggled against the oppressive gloom, revealing walls encrusted with strange, dark crystals that absorbed rather than reflected light, making the cave feel even darker. Deeper within, the caves opened into vast, echoing chambers, lit not by lumen, but by pools of phosphorescent water that glowed with an eerie green light. Strange blind fish with translucent fins swam lazily in their depths, their pale forms barely visible in the luminous water. The silence was profound, broken only by the rhythmic drip of water from the stalactites and the faint, almost imperceptible ein whispers that seemed to emanate from the very stones themselves, rustling through the vast space like dry leaves. These were the Whispering Caves, known in the legends for their tendency to amplify fears and doubts, to show travelers their deepest anxieties reflected in the gloom. But there was something more here. As Ilara moved deeper, faint, shadowy figures began to coalesce at the very edge of Lumen's struggling light. They were not solid, but like distortions in the air, shifting and coalescing into vague humanoid shapes, then dissipating, only to reform elsewhere. These were the Shadow Weavers, residual echoes of despair and sorrow, drawn to the cave's unique, melancholic energy. They weren't malicious in a physical sense, but they fed on fear, and their presence made the air cold and heavy, a palpable weight on Ilara's spirit. Lumen's light flickered nervously, its usual steady glow wavering in their presence. Ilara clutched the small, smooth river stone from her valley that she carried in her pouch, a tangible connection to home, a grounding force. She focused on the warmth in her chest, the ember of hope that had been fanned by the truth water and the sky scribe runes. She took a deep breath, letting the clean scent of pine from her memory fill her lungs. "They cannot harm me," she whispered, her voice echoing in the vast, silent space, filled with her own unwavering conviction. "My purpose is stronger than their shadows. My hope is brighter than their despair." Lumen, sensing her renewed resolve, flared brightly, pushing back against the encroaching gloom. The shadow weavers recoiled, hissing faintly as their insubstantial forms dissipated like smoke, unable to penetrate the pure light of Ilara's courage. The caves had tested her inner strength, her ability to face the unseen and the daunting, and she had passed. Emerging from the caves as dawn broke, Ilara found herself on a high windswept plateau. Before her stretched an impossible sight, a bridge, not of stone or wood, but woven from solidified starlight, arching gracefully across a chasm so deep its bottom was lost in perpetual mist. This was the Sky Bridge, a legend whispered only in the most ancient of tales, said to connect the material world to the ethereal heart of the mountain. The bridge hummed with power, a low, resonant thrum that vibrated through the very air. Spectral figures like faint starlight given form danced along its length. These were not hostile, but tests of focus, tempting the traveler to step off the shimmering path into the endless void, to lose themselves in the captivating dance of light. Each step Ilara took on the shimmering bridge felt precarious, as if she walked on fragile glass, yet it was surprisingly solid beneath her weight. She kept her gaze fixed on the other side, on the rising sun painting the highest peaks with fiery hues, and on the faint pulsating glow of the mountain's heart that seemed to beckon her. Halfway across, a figure materialized from the dancing starlight. It was not a physical being, but a construct of pure energy, shimmering with all the colors of the aurora borealis. It had no discernible face, but its presence radiated an ancient wisdom and immense power. This was the Star Guardian, a protector of ancient knowledge, a sentinel of the Sky Bridge. Its voice was a chime of crystalline bells, resonating directly in Ilara's mind, bypassing her ears and settling into her very thoughts. "Traveler, what do you seek in these sacred heights? What price will you pay for the mountain's truth?" Ilara didn't hesitate. Her purpose was clear, honed by the trials of the mountain. "I seek not for myself but for my valley," she stated, her voice clear and strong despite the thin air. "Its heartlight dims, its spirit wanes. I seek the source, the heart fire that nourishes all living things, that it may be rekindled. My price is my unwavering dedication, my courage, and the pure hope of my people. I offer all I am to restore what has been lost." Lumen pulsed with agreement, its light mirroring Ilara's sincerity, blazing with a steady, intense glow. The Star Guardian observed her, its form swirling with light, an eternity of knowledge contained within its luminous essence. "Your spirit is true, Seeker. The heart fire you seek is not merely a flame, but a living essence, woven into the very fabric of this mountain, connected to all life. It lies beyond the veil of whispers, protected by trials of mind and spirit. But know this, to touch the heart fire is to become part of its purpose, to bind your destiny to its own. Are you willing to bear such a burden? To carry such a weight for all time? To carry such a weight for all time? To carry such a weight for all time?" Ilara looked at Lumen, its bright gaze fixed on hers, then at the distant, mist-shrouded peak that seemed to call to her with an undeniable pull. She thought of her valley, of the slow dimming, the quiet despair that had begun to creep in. Her people needed her. "I am willing," she stated, her voice firm, unwavering. "I will bear the burden. I will carry the weight." The Star Guardian shimmered, then dissolved back into the starlight of the bridge, leaving behind a single glowing mote of light, no larger than a firefly. It hovered before Ilara, then began to drift forward, leading the way off the Sky Bridge. "Follow the Star Whisper," the Guardian's voice echoed, fading like the last note of a bell. The motes of light led her off the bridge and onto a hidden path that wound through a narrow, winding pass. The air here was strangely still, heavy with a peculiar silence, and a fine, almost invisible mist hung thick, smelling faintly of ozone and ancient stone. This was the Vale of Whispers, a place where the barrier between worlds thinned, where the mountain's dreams and memories bled into reality. As Ilara stepped into the vale, the mist thickened, swirling with an ethereal glow, and strange fleeting images began to coalesce within it. Visions of her valley, not as it was, but in peril, its lights extinguished, its people forlorn. But also, visions of false comfort. A warm hearth, a familiar face, A temptation to turn back, to choose an easier path, to abandon the arduous quest for immediate illusory peace. Whispers of doubt, fear, and longing assailed her from all sides, magnified by the veil's peculiar magic. Her greatest fears and her deepest desires were projected before her, shimmering illusions designed to test her resolve. Lumen, sensing the potent illusions and the psychic assault, began to emit a high-pitched steady hum, its light vibrating with an unusual intensity. The hum seemed to disrupt the illusions, causing them to flicker and distort, like faulty projections. Elara held Lumen close, feeling its warmth and steady vibration. She used its pure light as her anchor in the shifting reality, her gaze fixed on the tiny, guiding star whisper mote. She remembered the elder's final words, spoken with a knowing smile. "Your heart will be your truest compass, Elara, when all other paths are lost." She closed her eyes for a moment, letting her inner light, the pure, unyielding purpose of her quest, guide her. She focused on the warmth of hope in her chest, on the faces of her people, on the sacred duty she had undertaken. When she opened them, the illusions still swirled, but they no longer held power over her. She saw them for what they were, mere phantoms, echoes without substance, unable to touch her true spirit. Step by careful step, guided by the star whisper and her own unwavering heart, she moved through the veil, her resolve a beacon against the illusions. Finally, the mist began to thin, parting like curtains of light. She emerged onto a wide open plateau, bathed in the soft glow of what must be a perpetual dawn, though the sun was nowhere to be seen. The sky above was a canvas of deep indigo, dotted with stars that seemed impossibly close, yet the plateau itself was suffused with a gentle ambient light. In the distance, rising majestically from the plateau's center, was a peak unlike any other she had encountered. It didn't look like stone, but like solidified light, pulsing with a gentle rhythmic glow, like a colossal living jewel. This was it. The heart of the mountain, the source. The plateau stretched out, a landscape of polished iridescent rock, studded with glowing crystal formations of impossible beauty. The air here was warm, vibrant, and hummed with a deep, resonant energy that thrummed through her very bones, a symphony of life. The distant peak, the heart, seemed to draw her forward with an irresistible pull, a silent promise of everything she sought. As she walked, the crystal formations around her began to sing, emitting soft, harmonious tones that resonated deep within her, a melodic welcome. These were the singing crystals, attuned to the mountain's living energy. They were not just beautiful, they seemed to be communicating, their song a welcome, a warning, and a promise. Lumen, now blazing with an almost blinding light, flitted around her, trilling with pure joy and excitement. It was as if it recognized this place, or sensed its profound significance, its own nature inextricably linked to this source. Its light mingled with the glow of the crystals, creating a symphony of light and sound, a celestial ballet. The path began to ascend once more, not a jagged climb, but a gentle, winding ramp of smooth, glowing stone that spiraled towards the heart. The heart of the mountain loomed closer, its light growing more intense, revealing intricate patterns of energy swirling within its core, like a cosmic nebula contained within a mountain. She felt a profound sense of awe, a reverence for the sheer, raw power of this place, but also a growing apprehension. She was so close, closer than any valley dweller had been in centuries, yet she knew the greatest trials often lay at the very threshold of destiny. As she reached the base of the final ascent, the glowing ramp leading directly into the heart, the air shimmered, and a new, formidable barrier began to coalesce before her, a shimmering wall of pure, crackling energy, hinting at a final, ultimate test of worthiness. The shimmering wall of pure, crackling energy pulsed with an unearthly light, throwing dancing shadows across the ancient stone. It hummed with a sound that was both a whisper and a roar, vibrating through Lyra's very bones. Wisps of energy, like inquisitive tendrils, lashed out from its surface, then recoiled, as if testing the air around her. It was not a wall to be broken by force. It radiated a power that would simply absorb and dissipate any such attempt. This was a test of a different kind. Lyra took a deep breath, the crisp, clean air of the peak filling her lungs. Her fingers, still tingling from the echoes of the living song she'd heard, instinctively went to the smooth, cool stone of the mountain's base. She felt the ancient, quiet strength beneath her palms. The barrier before her was a magnificent, terrifying spectacle, a living shield wrought from the mountain's own essence. She extended a tentative hand, not quite touching, but feeling the fierce heat radiating from it. It felt like standing before a roaring bonfire, yet it was cold with an ethereal chill. As her fingers neared the shimmering surface, a sudden blinding flash erupted, pushing her back a step. A voice, clear as mountain spring water yet resonating with the depth of the earth, echoed in her mind, though no sound passed her lips. Only those whose heart beats in harmony with the mountain's own may pass. Harmony. That was the key. Not strength, not magic, but harmony. Lyra closed her eyes, seeking the rhythm within herself, the one her grandmother had taught her to find in the quiet moments of the valley. She remembered the whisper of the wind through the pines, the gentle murmur of the river, the slow, steady pulse of her own heartbeat as she slept under the stars. She thought of the valley, of its vibrant colors, its hidden glades, its enduring peace, all gifts from the heart. She thought of the living song she had heard, a melody of pure life that had resonated with her spirit. The barrier was not an obstacle, but an invitation, a lock that required a specific key, the true song of a pure heart. Opening her eyes, Lyra lifted her chin. She didn't possess grand magic, only the simple songs of her people, songs of harvest, of rain, of warmth and shelter. But perhaps that was exactly what was needed. She took another deep breath, letting the sacred silence of the peak fill her, pushing away fear. Then softly at first, she began to sing. Her voice, usually quiet and gentle, now carried a newfound strength, an unwavering clarity. She sang of the valley, of its children and its creatures, of the ancient trees that touched the sky, of the deep roots that held the earth. She sang of the sun's warmth, the moon's gentle glow, the cycle of life and renewal. It was a song born of love, of reverence, of a profound connection to the land she had come to save. As her melody wove through the crisp air, something miraculous began to happen. The crackling energy of the barrier softened, its harsh light dimming to a gentle glow. The furious hum quieted, transforming into a low, resonant thrum that seemed to vibrate in perfect synchronicity with Lyra's voice. The tendrils of energy, which had lashed out aggressively before, now reached out gently, like curious fingers brushing against her, not searing, but tingling with warmth. She felt a connection, a bridge forming between her spirit and the mountain's core. The shimmering wall wasn't dissolving, it was parting, like a curtain of light. A path opened before her, a tunnel of swirling luminescent energy that beckoned her forward. With a final soaring note that echoed the deepest yearnings of her soul, Lyra stepped into the heart of the light. The world dissolved around her, replaced by an ethereal embrace. She felt no ground beneath her feet, no air in her lungs, only pure, vibrant energy flowing through her, around her. It was as if she had become part of the light itself. The journey through the energy tunnel was brief, a breathtaking surge through the very veins of the mountain. Then, just as swiftly, she emerged. Lyra found herself in a vast cavernous space, unlike anything she could have ever imagined. This was the heart of the mountain. The chamber was immense, sculpted by unimaginable forces, its walls not of stone, but of iridescent crystal that pulsed with soft internal light. Vines of glowing ore snaked across the ceiling like cosmic constellations, showering the space with a kaleidoscope of colors, soft blues, deep purples, emerald greens. In the very center of this awe-inspiring chamber stood the heart itself. It wasn't a physical organ, nor a mere jewel, but a colossal, living crystal formation that towered towards the crystalline ceiling. It pulsed with a faint, melancholic light, a soft, dying glow that barely illuminated its magnificent facets. A low, mournful hum resonated from it, a sound of profound sadness and weariness, the living song she had heard before, but now fading, almost extinguished. It was breathtakingly beautiful, yet heartbreakingly fragile. Lyra felt a pang of sorrow deep in her chest. This was the source of all life in the valley, the wellspring of its magic, and it was dying. As she stepped closer, the crystal heart seemed to respond to her presence. A faint tremor ran through its immense form, and the melancholic hum deepened slightly, as if acknowledging her. She could feel its immense age, its weariness, but also its enduring gentle spirit. "You have come," a voice whispered, not in her mind this time, but seeming to emanate from the very air, from the crystal itself, resonant and ancient. A valley dweller, after so long, the song of your heart is true. Lyra knelt, overcome by the sheer presence of the heart. Great One, she murmured, her voice trembling slightly. The valley, it fades, its life ebbs, we need your light. The crystal pulsed, a wave of gentle energy washing over her. The world outside, it has forgotten the true song. It has sought to take, not to give. The connection weakens, my light is drawn from the harmony of all things. When that harmony falters, so do I. But we remember, Lyra pleaded, looking up at the fading heart. My grandmother, she taught me. We cherish the valley, we sing to the earth, we live in balance, we have not forgotten. Our flicker remains, the voice acknowledged. Enough to draw you here. But to rekindle the full flame, it requires more than remembrance. It requires a bridge, a living conduit to restore the flow of harmony. Lyra understood. The heart needed not just to be remembered, but to be reconnected, to have its song sung back into it, not just by one, but by Yoli. But she was only one girl. What must I do? She asked, her gaze fixed on the fading light. How can I be that bridge? Your song. It holds the essence of what is lost and what is remembered. Sing your song into me, not with your voice alone, but with your spirit, with your love, with every beat of your courageous heart. Let your essence merge with mine, if only for a moment. Be the spark that rekindles the flame. It was a daunting request, a surrender of self to something unimaginably vast. But Lyra felt no fear now, only a profound sense of purpose. She had come this far. She would not falter. She rose, placing both hands on the cool, smooth surface of the immense crystal. She closed her eyes, and once again, she began to sing. But this time it was not just a song of the valley. It was her song. It was the melody of her journey, her hope, her fears overcome, her deep, abiding love for her home, her grandmother, for every blade of grass and every mountain stream. She poured her entire being into the notes, letting her spirit soar, letting her heart beat in unison with the ancient rhythm she now felt within the crystal. As her song reached its crescendo, a phenomenal transformation began. The mournful hum of the heart swelled, growing stronger, deeper, no longer sad, but vibrant. The faint glow within the crystal intensified, spreading rapidly through its colossal form. Primal colors, richer and more brilliant than any Lyra had ever seen, pulsed through the crystalline veins of the chamber. Lyra felt a surge of energy flow from her, into the heart, and then, impossibly, back into her, magnified 1,000-fold. It was not draining, it was empowering. She felt herself becoming one with the mountain, with the valley, with the very essence of life itself. The air crackled with revitalized magic, the chamber filling with a glorious booming symphony of light and sound. The heart of the mountain, once fading, now blazed with a magnificent living light, casting rainbows across the cavern. Its song was no longer a lament, but a triumphant chorus, a symphony of pure, unadulterated life, resonating with joy and renewed power. Slowly, gently, Lyra opened her eyes. The heart pulsed before her, a beacon of radiant energy, vibrant and strong. She felt different, not physically changed, but imbued with a deep, quiet understanding, a profound connection to the world around her. She was a part of the living song, and it was a part of her. A final, soft whisper echoed in her mind, full of gratitude and ancient wisdom. The bridge is forged, the song renewed, the valley will flourish once more. Remember your connection, little one. The heart beats within you now as it beats within the mountain. With a final, gentle push of energy, Lyra found herself back at the base of the final ascent. The shimmering barrier was gone, vanished as if it had never been, leaving only the glowing ramp leading down. But the valley below, it was transformed. Even from this height, Lyra could see the change. A vibrant, golden light now bathed the entire valley, shimmering like morning dew on a spiderweb. The colors of the forests were deeper, the river sparkled with renewed vigor, and even the distant peaks seemed to glow with a fresh ethereal beauty. She could almost feel the life surging through the earth, a joyous hum that rose to meet her. Her journey back down the mountain was swift, almost dreamlike. The flowers she had passed on the way up now bloomed with impossible brilliance. The air hummed with magic, alive and invigorated. When she finally reached her village, the valley dwellers were already emerging from their homes, their faces alight with wonder and hope. The muted colors of their clothes, their homes, even their very skin, seemed to glow with a renewed vitality. Her grandmother was waiting for her, standing by their cottage door, a smile of profound understanding gracing her weathered face. Lyra ran into her arms, hugging her tightly. "It's done, grandmother," she whispered, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. "The heart, it sings again." Her grandmother held her close, stroking her hair. "I know, my little songbird. I felt it. We all felt it. The valley breathes anew." She pulled back slightly, her eyes twinkling. "You were the bridge, Lyra. You brought the mountain song back to us, and ours back to the mountain." Lyra looked out at the valley, now bathed in a soft, magical light that promised boundless life and endless wonder. She had faced her fears, embraced her courage, and found the strength not in magic, but in the pure, unwavering song of her own heart. The valley was safe, reborn. And Lyra, the quiet valley dweller, now carried the ancient song of the mountain within her, a silent promise to forever cherish the magic that beat at the very heart of their world. As the sun dipped below the rejuvenated peaks, casting long golden shadows, Lyra knew that the true magic wasn't in grand spells or mighty powers, but in the quiet harmony that connected all living things, a harmony she would now help to protect forever.